Hi, this is Dr. Stephanie Wautier, and I'm the host of Conversations with a Chiropractor. I believe healing often begins with connection, and that's really what this podcast is about. These are real conversations about health, healing, life, and the stories that shape us. Some guests come from the wellness world, some come from the community, and some simply bring a life experience worth sharing. My hope is that each conversation invites you to listen, learn, reflect, and maybe see your own life or healing in a new way. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy this conversation with a chiropractor.
Conversations with a Chiropractor is a place for open dialogue and the sharing of diverse perspectives. While guests are encouraged to speak freely, their opinions are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of the host. Neither Dr. Stephanie nor Conversations with a Chiropractor endorse nor assume responsibility for statements made by guests. We hope you enjoy today's episode.
Today on Conversations with a Chiropractor, I'm joined by Mike Dillon. Mike is a Christian entrepreneur, an environmental wellness advocate, and the host of MAHA with Mike on Rumble, where he explores the overlooked factors shaping everyday health, especially the hidden crisis of indoor air quality. As the founder and owner of Airwater Healing, Mike has spent years studying the intersection of the environment, performance, and human well-being. Mike, thanks so much for being on this podcast.
I appreciate it. This is such a topic that so many people overlook. You know, when you think about your general wellness, most people don't think about your home, where you dwell, where you live. And, you know, I discovered about 15 years ago that this generation is different than any generation in the past, because when you consider the amount of time that grandma, grandpa spent outdoors, you know, we worked outside, we gathered outside, you know, before we had, you know, buildings, we were in huts or yurts or teepees, and, you know, the fresh air constantly moved through the environment that we were in. And today, the average American spends 90% of their life indoors.
Wow. That's crazy. We know that, you know, even when I was growing up, my parents said, play outside, go outside, get outside. And now, we have all of this technology and video games, and kids are inside more than they ever are. I want to jump right into mold. So we know that mold has become, maybe it's just the awareness that has become so great, but can you tell me, like, statistically, percentage-wise, what are we dealing with here? Are lots of homes affected by mold?
90% of Americans are exposed to mold on a weekly basis, whether it's the gym that you're working out at, which is another topic. You know, we used to exercise outdoor, cut down trees. We used to go hunting. And I think that 70% of Americans on a yearly basis have some sort of mold inside of their home. 100% of people are exposed to mold on a daily basis in their home, but the severity or the level of that mold, regarding whether it's a mycotoxin or just a little bit of a fungus type mold. But when you think about the way that homes are built today, they are so different than previous ways that homes were built, because when we shifted from opening up the windows to putting in air conditionings and heating units, we became energy efficient. So what happened was we actually tracked ourselves in. We literally trapped ourselves in with deadly toxic precision. And that is one of the biggest issues, because you have older homes that are leaking air, and the builders absolutely hated it. So they said, let's put in hurricane-proof windows, let's insulate, let's spray foam insulation. We're not going to allow any of those leaks to allow air to escape, but it also isn't allowing moisture to escape. So when you think about water being one of the most smallest particles on the planet Earth, your grout is so susceptible to water penetrating it, which can allow mold to not only leak into your shower contained area, but also underneath sinks, HVACs. There's so many people that are exposed to mold on a daily basis. And here in America, it's often misdiagnosed.
So do we have to see the mold to know that we have mold in our home?
So I'll tell you this, they call mold the silent killer, so a lot of people, and this is where mold is so tricky, because of your immune system, your body density. You could have a husband who's 6'5", weighs 285 pounds, and you could have a wife that's 5'2", weighs 125 pounds, and then you could have two younger children in the house. You could have a child and the mother that's chronically ill due to mold exposure, but yet one of the children and the father are showing no symptoms. So that's why it is so hard for people to believe that you can be exposed to mold and nobody else in the house be mold prone, because of the immune compromise of a system inside of your own body and being able to break it down.
So some people are more susceptible, or some people are more resistant, or able to sort of fight through it. What are some of the symptoms of mold toxicity, or when someone has been affected by mold? What are some of those symptoms?
My gosh. So when you talk about breathing issues, allergies, asthma attacks, you could have, in extreme cases, people can have hallucinations. You can have people that can not only break down your immune system, but you could have people that are just being tortured. We've had women who are double breast cancer survivors who were exposed to mold or mycotoxins in their home, and they literally have said, I would rather take on breast cancer again than take on mold, because of what it does to your sleep, what it does to your brain. And it is such a tricky thing. And I can tell you that if for anybody that's ever survived mold or mold toxicity, they have suffered with it usually for years before someone finally cracks the case.
So who are the doctors, or where can people go if they do suspect that they have like a mold illness of sorts?
So you want to know one of the cheapest things to do where this is so incredible before you go spend thousands and thousands of dollars in testing not only your body, but testing your house for molds. First and foremost, there are some very inexpensive kits that you can get online. I don't sell them and I don't provide them, so I'm not trying to make money off of this. There are some inexpensive air sample tests that you can actually do at home to see if you do have mold. But one of the greatest things that you can do is go to the big box store, pick one, and buy a $40 or $50 tent and go out in your backyard. Spend 2 days outside, and if all of your symptoms that you were experiencing inside disappear, there's a very good chance that you were exposed to something inside of the home. I always point to checking the house for mold first. But a lot of the times with the cases where we've gone in, we've worked with, Todd Shallak. We've worked with Dr. Gary Rosen, who is biochemistry. He graduated from UCLA. He's probably one of the biggest mold remediators in the Southeast. But also we've worked with companies like Mold Testers 561, companies that have gone to Louisiana. They've gone to New York. They go in after big storms and they go in and they test for the mold. But one of the biggest things that I've heard from all of the mold conferences is someone goes away on vacation. And if the place that they go to on vacation doesn't have mold in the HVAC system, they're like, I feel better. I go to my cousin's house and I feel better. The second that I come back home, or the second that I go back to my office space or where I'm working, I start getting headaches. I start getting migraines. I start having allergy attacks, asthma related issues. That's when I'm like, all right, this is a person that definitely either needs to remediate the mold or they need to put in a product or a technology that can remove the mold on its own.
So these symptoms are very they quickly leave your body, it sounds like. Like someone with a mold issue is going to know once they're in a different environment. It's not like they're still going to be sick. Is
Correct.
that what
Well, you can still have long-term mold exposure, but the things that you get from like racing thoughts, panic sensations, nervous system deregulation, very low motivation, low libido, lack of focus, brain fog, memory issues, exhaustion, even after sleeping. So if you're getting 8 hours of sleep and you wake up and you're like, I feel like I need 37 cups of coffee, which could be half of Americans, but when it's due to mold exposure, you have lots of midday crashes and you feel like there's just a lack of recovery in every aspect of your life.
So let's just say that I do this test and there's mold in my house somewhere. Do I go to the bathrooms first? Like, is that moisture, like where there's showers or baths, would that be the most likely place? And then, what do we do from there? Like, so twofold. How do we manage the home that has mold? And then how do we manage our health to get to recover from the mold?
So one of the things that I can tell your listeners, an ideal range is you want to be between 40 to 60% relative humidity. Very inexpensive. They have readers that you can get on Amazon for $30, connect it to your phone. I'm not a big fan of Bluetooth readers, but if you live in this world, we're kind of with the AI data centers and everything popping up, we almost can't escape Wi-Fi, which is a whole other podcast that you and I can dive into. But if you've got Bluetooth and you've got Wi-Fi already in the home, the best thing you could do is just get a very inexpensive humidity reader and make sure that you're keeping it below 60% humidity, because that's when mold starts to thrive and it starts to react with other bacteria and things that are inside of the home. First answer to your question is, first place I would check is the bathroom. I would definitely do an air sample test in the bathroom. And then usually the second biggest culprit is the HVAC system. So if you've got a leak inside of your air handler and it's blowing mold spores into every room inside of the house, that's why they have these very inexpensive clips that you can clip to your air ducts, not where the return vent is, where they're taking the air back in, the outtake. Wherever it's blowing air, you can put these little test strips that are up there, run the air for a couple hours, and then you take it and you put it in like a closed little case, and then they usually recommend that you put it like in a cupboard somewhere where it's dark and cooler than the rest of the house, and then you'll be able to see if anything's growing on that. And a lot of those mold kits, and I don't want people to rush to go spend $1,500 to $2,000 to have a professional come out. Start with something that is very inexpensive to test the mold first, but definitely if the mold is coming from a leaky pipe, doesn't matter what system you buy, you have to remediate where the water is dripping into the environment first.
Because otherwise you're just going to have that like re-exposure, right?
Yeah.
So how does someone like detox from the mold? Like, so let's just say they've got their house taken care of. They've found the problem. They've remediated it. How does someone heal their body from that mold exposure, from that toxicity?
So I think one of the best things that every human being can do, and this is not anybody that has just been exposed to mold, one of the best things you can do is do a liver cleanse. The liver cleanse is literally the filter. Like when you have a car, if you drive a car for 50,000 miles and you never change the oil, what do you think is going to happen to that car?
The engine's going to burn up.
You're going to burn up. You are going to burn up. I would start with a liver cleanse. And if you go to airwaterhealing.com, there's 100 other companies that are out there. We actually have we have a mold protocol. At the end of this podcast, I will give out my personal email. If anybody wants a personalized detox protocol, we have the best protocol for detoxing not only heavy metals, but getting rid of mold and mycotoxins that can be inside of the body. And the best part is, we don't use anything that is manufactured for a pharmaceutical company. Everything we do is homeopathic or holistic, and it's all vegan-based. So we're using all plants. We're using what God put on the earth to be able to detox from these horrible, horrible conditions that people are faced with on a daily basis. Now, one of the first things that I would recommend that everybody do is first figure out what the problem is that you're trying to solve before you go into any extensive cleanse.
This episode of Conversations with a Chiropractor is supported by Lemon Grove Oil. One of the things I'm always paying attention to, both in this podcast and in my work, is where something comes from. Not just what a product says it does, but who created it, why they created it, and whether there is real care behind it. That is one of the reasons Lemon Grove Oil feels like such a natural fit here. Lemon Grove was founded by chiropractor Dr. Jerry Del Canton. This is not a random wellness brand that appeared overnight because CBD became popular. It grew out of the chiropractic world, where trust matters, where quality matters, and where people are often looking for thoughtful ways to support themselves between visits, during their busy seasons of life, and in the day-to-day routines that shape how they feel. Lemon Grove offers professional-grade CBD products, including topical lotions, butters, roll-ons, and gummies. They focus on quality, transparency, THC-free formulations with third-party testing, and products designed with healthcare providers in mind. I think that matters because when you are choosing something for yourself or your family, you want more than nice packaging. You want to know there is a real philosophy behind it. If you're curious about Lemon Grove Oil, visit their website at www.lemongroveoil.com.
Visit the link in the description and use code DRStephanie at checkout to save 10% on your next order. This offer is exclusive to listeners of Conversations with a Chiropractor.
You need to make sure you know what it is that you're combating before you go to any supplement store and go waste your money.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that so many people do want a quick fix. This is America, right? I mean, we're the fast food nation. So many people just they want to be done with it. They want to be over with it, and they want to get it for the cheapest price that they can get it, right? This is what I'm really, really hoping that my listeners can see as they hear all of these experts in these different arenas, that, you cannot just trust the internet. You can't just, go on there and search liver cleanse and think that, the cheapest one is the best. Or maybe even if I said this on another podcast, if there's like a celebrity endorsement, that doesn't really mean anything. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's the purest or the best or the highest quality. It just means that someone is really good at marketing,
Yeah.
So
Which is why, like, I implore, like, anybody who, wants to do a background and wants to, figure out, which company you should go and purchase something from, or who you should take advice from. When we integrate, we get emails every single day of people that want to sell things that are on our website. And they're like, oh, you'll get a better profit margin. We'll give you this. We'll give you free this. We'll sponsor your podcast. We'll sponsor this. We flew out to every single place that we sell products on, from our water filtration systems to our supplements. Like 99% of all of the supplements that are on our website were made by a chiropractor who started his company in 1996. And we toured his entire facility. And when I left there, we spent 3 days between all of the facilities and just watching how they source the materials, the microsomal technology that they're using to get better than liposomal absorption, and just seeing how they built the manufacturing facility from the ground up using no contaminated drywall. They're using all granite stones, no off-gassing, best filtration. The gentleman that we source our liquids from, he spent over $1 million building his triple distilled biophotonic water filtration system, meaning that we had to have the best water for our supplements because everything starts with water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just
Yeah.
looking at like Vogel crystals and structuring the water, I knew that this guy was speaking a different language. And we sat down for almost an hour and he was showing us Calilarian photography of like just the magnetics and the energetics of the plants. So you could see like the milk thistle, how it reacted underneath a microscope, and how they were looking at things under an electron microscope, looking at the live blood analysis of human beings before and after they took the supplement. And he's like, I could go buy 500 pounds of milk thistle for $37 from India. He's like, or I can spend, 5 times that much and get it grown in a certified organic field where they're doing soil regeneration. And, when the companies came in and were like, oh, well, you got to heat treat your raw herbs or we can't give you this label. He's like, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you. And I'm like, that's the kind of guy you want to do business with, because he's like, I'm not going to heat treat the raw herbs that are coming in because it removes the microbiomes of where that, dandelion root or that milk thistle was grown. And what you're starting to see, especially in the chiropractic industry, we're starting to see that the next frontier of wellness advocates, they're not focusing on just nutrition, exercise, and supplements, but they're looking at what's in my air, what's in my water, what's in my home. Because if you spend 90% of your life indoors, over 50% of it is inside of your home.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump right into water. So, many of us have city water, or some of us have well water. We know that contaminants can come into the well. How do we test our water, and how do we know it's the best? How do we know it's the purest?
So one of the greatest things on earth right now is there is a nonprofit company called EWG. So go to ewg.org/tap water. You can go there. Now, this is unfortunately not going to work for anybody that has their own well, but if you are on a city municipality, you could live on this podcast or take out your phone right now and go to ewg.org/tap water database, put in your zip code, and it will test the municipal water when they do it either monthly or bi-monthly. So you can literally in real time see what's in your water. And one of the things that I will bring to your listeners, the greatest mistake that humans will make is looking at something that is legal limits and safe limits. There is a difference between what is legally allowed to be in the water and what can be safe. So you can go there, and the best part about doing that is then you can go and you can build a filtration system that is based on removing what it is that you do not want. So people come up to me all the time and they're like, "Oh, well, I never vaccinated my child, but I live on this property where we're really close to a golf course and I'm 3.5 miles away from a farm." And we're like, "Well, when's the last time you tested your water?" "Oh, well, my kid only drinks distilled water, or we only drink, hydrogen water that we get from some fancy place in a glass bottle because I'm worried about microplastics." And I'm like, "All right, so your kid doesn't take a bath?" And they're like, "Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything." Well, your skin is your largest organ.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
you know how quickly chlorine and glyphosate gets absorbed into the skin? So you're gonna
Mhm.
take little Johnny, and then you're gonna go soak him in a hot tub and let him sit there and play for 30 minutes. And I'm
Mhm.
sorry, but every single one of my kids, they always grab the washcloth, and innately, the second you turn around to go grab the shampoo, they're sucking on the water they're drinking that, so it's getting internally, but they're soaking in this water. So we go back to looking at what can we put into a water filtration system and customize. So before we ever build a whole home water filtration system, we're going to go to EWG and we're going to look at what is in the contaminants. We're going to custom build a filter for an individual, or at
Mm.
the very least, convince them to put something underneath the sink and stop buying plastic bottles. We're going to get
Wow.
a good water filtration system so they're drinking good, clean water. And then we've got upgrades that they can do beyond that. So if somebody wants to put hydrogen into the water, we have a very inexpensive way where we can actually take the water, put it through a filtration system, and then add hydrogen gas to the water. So you're getting 2 to 3 times the recommended limit of what we call medicinal grade hydrogen. And one of the best things that you can do is just go to hydrogenstudies.com. Right now, there's about 1,300 studies that have been done on
Mm.
hydrogen water. There's been over 150 studies that are directly linked to helping with cancer or preventing it. And those are all studies that are available for free. I don't have any affiliation with them. It's actually done by an international hydrogen association. So you just go to hydrogenstudies.com and you can just go right on the search word and type it in and look at it. And, for people who say, I can't afford this, these are the same people that, and I used to be that guy that are running and spending $15 at Starbucks in the morning, and they're going and spending $30 at, Chipotle. And then at the end of the month, when you go and look at how much time you ate out, purifying the air and the water in your house is the number one thing that you can do overall for your health, other than possibly intermittent fasting and seeing a chiropractor weekly.
Mhm. Thanks for the chiropractic plug there.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who maybe they're not going to take this step and they're not going to look at the hydrogen studies, can you give us a little bit of a synopsis on why adding hydrogen to water is
Yeah,
helpful and
so
healthful?
so so if you look at the periodic table of elements, number 1 is hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most powerful antioxidant known to man. And when you put hydrogen water into your gut, I don't care what supplement you're taking. You drink hydrogen water, you're increasing the bioavailability and the absorption of said supplement. You're talking about at a cellular level, anti-aging, better sleep, better function. I've had people that have been coffee drinkers for years switch to hydrogen water, and they're like, I can go out and play 3 rounds of pickleball and I've got no inflammation in my body. It is one of the fastest ways to recover. The top athletes in the world now are doing hydrogen water. If you look at all of the people that have switched from regular water to just adding 3 or 4 glasses a day of hydrogenated water or, hydrogen gas induced water, you're going to have people that are getting better sleep. But more importantly, clinically, you can see what it does into the body when you do like HRV, you do like heart rate variability. You can see the light switch on inside of somebody 30 minutes after they've drank a glass of hydrogen rich water. And people always think that, oh, there's already hydrogen in water because it's H2 H2O, right? 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. But if you go and take a parts per million reader and you go get regular tap water, the water that I'm drinking right here, it would probably have about 1.5 to 1.7 parts per million of H2 gas inside of it that's dissolved. And this is chugging water. So, the longer you let the water sit out, it will dissipate. Anybody that tells you that they're going to sell you hydrogen water that'll last for a month, they're lying. This has to be continually generated, but it is one of the best things that you can do. And again, just for inflammation and for better sleep, I think everybody knows how important sleep is.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting. So, I've been to a lot of chiropractic conventions and they have all of these vendors, and I have seen a different kind of not air, but water purification system that talks about changing the pH. Tell me how this is different. Tell me how this is different than like the hydrogen water.
So if you've ever been to a chiropractic conference over the past 20 years, I do the Texas Chiropractic. I do the one in Orlando. We do the FCA. I do the Parker University. We do the Minnesota Chiropractic. We do Tennessee Chiropractic Association. We've been displaying air and water products for over 15 years. One of the biggest differences between buying a good water filtration system that puts hydrogen gas into it, buying from a company that is solely based on what they call network marketing, is mostly you're paying for a commission structure. There are some great water companies that are out there that will produce hydrogen, but there have not been a lot of clinical studies that are done on high alkalinity or low alkalinity. So I always like to tell people that if you believe in God, or you believe in the universe, or you believe in a greater creator and not just the Big Bang, if you go test glacier water or is just coming down a stream or from a lake, it's usually right around 6.8 to 7.2 pH. So you're not really wanting to drink super high alkaline water before you eat, because it can mess with your acidity that's inside of your stomach. So when you're looking at pH, that stands for potential hydrogen. What separates what we're doing is we're taking the water and we are not changing the pH. All we're doing is dissolving hydrogen gas. And where that's really cool is if you go to a lot of these other companies that are out there, there's a lot of great ones that are being displayed. But the issue is you're not able to use distilled or RO water because they need the minerals inside of the water to be able to go over their plates. We're doing something different. There's no plates inside of our system. We have a photon exchange chamber where we're actually pressurizing and we're putting the gas and we're bubbling it into the water, and we're not changing the pH. So if you're one of those people that doesn't drink water when you're eating, then perfect. Maybe you can benefit from hydrogen. I always like to swish my mouth around after I'm eating a steak or eating a salad, and I'm always drinking water when I'm eating. It's just who I am. All the doctors in the world can tell me that it's better to wait 30 minutes. That's one of the things that I'm not going to be able to change in an aspect of my life. I grew up with a glass of water sitting on the table when I'm eating. You can call me crazy, tell me I'm wrong. Each person is built differently. But there is a difference between pH water and dissolving straight hydrogen gas into the water without affecting the alkalinity. I will say, from somebody who's been in the water space for 20 years, I think that the best water that you can drink is RO or distilled, because if you want to get a little bit of Celtic sea salt, you can always remineralize. But if you're depending on getting your minerals from your water, you're not eating the right food.
That's very poignant. Absolutely. There's a very, very popular sort of trend for carbonated water. What are your thoughts on that? And would you tell our listeners what the difference between carbonated water and still water is?
So if you're talking about carbonated water, like you're talking about just like sparkling water, like actually putting carbonation
sparkling water,
into
like
it.
LaCroix.
So I mean, I'm not going to sit here and bash carbonated water. There's people that absolutely love it. There's people that absolutely hate it. But if you're going to carbonate your water, I would distill it, or I would use RO water first, because when you change the process of a water, same exact thing that happens with hydrogen. Anybody that hydrogenates water, they tell you not to use tap water, because the hydrogen that you're using can actually do more harm if you're not putting clean water into it, because you're changing the chemistry inside of the water. I'm not against sparkling water. My dad, anywhere he goes in the country, he's always getting a bottle of Perrier. He loves the sparkling water, comes in a glass bottle, less microplastics, and he loves it. If you got a carbonation system, I would highly recommend that you just go and get like one of those soda streams and you can just make your own carbonation water at home, but make sure you're using a very clean water because you do not want to add more bioavailability to dirty water.
Interesting. You used a term RO water.
Mhm.
What is that again?
So RO is reverse osmosis. So what
Reverse
that's doing is
osmosis.
it's stripping out everything in the water. They call
Okay.
it dead water because it literally strips the minerals, but it is very, very clean. And all
Okay.
of the water that we've done, and when you do TDS testing, it tests better than all of the other filtration systems that are out there. I highly recommend if somebody could afford it, you can even do a whole home RO system. But now you're talking about in the tens of thousands of dollars versus we can build systems from anywhere from 1,800 to just under $4,000 for a whole home and get rid of most of everything from fluoride to chlorine to bromium to heavy metals to arsenic to lead. Those are the biggest and baddest guys that are out there. And when you go to that ewg.org website that
Yeah.
I told you about, the most important thing to look at is look at the levels of things that are considered known carcinogens. That's like the number one thing that you want to remove.
Does it matter what kind of pipes someone has, like old copper pipes versus the new like plastic? I think the new pipes are plastic, right?
Yeah, yeah. And if somebody has copper, they're probably healthier than most people that are out there because copper is an antimicrobial just by itself. There's
Yeah.
people out there that are pushing the copper bracelets. And I know you as a chiropractor probably have people that come in with like the copper sleeves, that they've got on their arms and, people that wear copper and they swear by it. But yeah, you want to be careful with lead pipes or any of the new PVC materials because it could be leaching microplastics or lead into the water. And that is definitely a culprit, especially if you live in a house that's, 50, 60 years old. Those pipes are so old. And it kind of, it made me laugh because there was a billboard that I saw when I was a kid and it used to say that your water can hang out in some pretty seedy joints. And I'll never forget that, because there are some seedy places that your water is hanging out. But, the water testing is something that you can pretty much rely on EWG. There's so many water companies that will come out and try to scare you and test your waters and do a bunch of different types of tests. I say just go with EWG because they're very reliable and they test the water very periodically. The only thing that can really change the water is if you're in a city where they put in chlorine or if you're very close to a golf course where your water purification system is, then you've got to look out for things like glyphosate or look out for other types of heavy metals, or if you're near a farmland, because then you're probably going to have a lot of nitrates that can get into the water.
Hmm. What about cities that are fluorinating or fluoridating the water? What's wrong with that?
Fluoride is a neurotoxin. I don't think that, you should be drinking anything that if your child swallows a toothpaste, they tell you to call poison control. I have been very against fluoride since, a very young child, but I also grew up very different. My mom, walked into the doctor's office and she asked them, can you show me any double blind placebo studies on what you want to inject my son with? Or could you sign a waiver here that if something happens to my son, I can hold you, criminally negligent or at least financially responsible if something happens to my son. And they're like, well, we don't have any safety studies we can show. And she's like, cool. She's like, ask me the next time I come in when you have those safety studies. When I got sick as a kid, I went to a chiropractor. My mom's like, you've got a fever. You need to go get an adjustment. So, I grew up in a very conservative, holistic, my mom was a crunchy mom before crunchy moms were cool. And I think that, if you look at the studies of why they put fluoride into the water, we made it for thousands and thousands of years without putting fluoride in the water. And we had, stronger, go look at some of the bones of the teeth of, people that were buried 100,000, days ago. Like, you look at mummies, they still have a full set of
Yeah.
teeth. How are they able to do it? And yes, I understand people will say that we're eating more sugar, we're consuming more processed food. There are so many better alternatives to fluoride. You could literally
Yeah.
use a strawberry with baking soda and the entire toothpaste industry would be completely out of business.
So excited to be talking to you because I know we started with like mold and then water, but you obviously have the very, very rich life history in this alternative world. Like, yay for your crunchy mom before she was, you know, popular, before the granola moms were popular. Mike, I want to dive in a little bit. What was there one thing that sort of led you down this journey, down this path? Was there an illness? Was there a sickness? Or was it just like you saw so many people that were being affected by poor indoor air quality?
Oh my gosh, man. So getting into the chiropractic realm kind of changed my life, because before I launched Airwater Healing, we were selling holistic and health products and we were going to chiropractic shows. And before that, to me, it was when you can strip yourself of your ego, it is one of the most life-changing things you do. And whether you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, or you go out to Mexico and you do ayahuasca, whatever your general person decides to do, I looked at the ego as edging God out. And for me, it was always about making money. And I wanted to make so much money to be able to provide for my family. And when I met a gentleman by the name of Dr. Edward Group, who is probably one of the coolest chiropractors in the world. He co-founded something called the Global Wellness Forum. They're lobbying right now with Robert F. Kennedy. They're trying to stop geoengineering. They're trying to change what's in the schools. They're trying to fight battles against the hospital systems for serving, GMO food and ultra-processed foods and vending machines, which is like crazy. If you've ever been to a hospital, you go there and you're sick and they literally will serve you the worst food in the world. And, I had been to so many cancer conferences and so many doctors shows, and they're like, oh, take this drug and you don't need to change your diet. I realized that everything comes from a root cause, right? And if you're in a system where the system that manufactures your food is owned by the same group of people that own the hospital systems, and they tell you, oh, chiropractors aren't real, naturopaths are quacks. And I'm like, but the real healing is happening at chiropractic offices. Real healing is happening at holistic and functional medicine doctors. Real healing is happening at acupuncturist offices, because they're changing the way you eat, the way you drink, the way you breathe, and even the way that you think. Right? Go read Dr. Bruce Lipton's books on epigenetics. Change the way you think and you can literally own the world. And when Dr. Group told me, he goes, if you help enough people, the money will follow. And I finally realized that doing the right thing is building and integrating systems from the ground up and helping people. And when you sell somebody a product that truly changes their life, and you get a phone call a month later, 6 months later, or the next year when you're at that conference, when someone comes up and they just wrap their arms around you and they're crying and they're like, you saved my life. I didn't save your life. You saved your life because you made a choice. You made a choice to not listen to the system that literally wants you to be sick, because restaurants wouldn't be in business if people weren't hungry. Hospitals wouldn't be in business if people went to the chiropractor, ate correctly, drank the water that God intended outside of a major accident. And I'm not trying to say that there's not doctors out there that are doing life-changing, but when you look at the third leading cause of death in the United States is medical error, you have to start thinking for yourself. And I'm not saying that you have to go out and get a PhD, but if you're a mother or a father, become the doctor of your own home. Start reading ingredients like your life depends on it. Start making decisions to breathe better, to drink better water. Get out and move your body. When you stop moving, your body dies.
Mike, this is truly wonderful. I love how you've integrated so many components to living a healthy life. And I love that, the Lord really touched your heart and encouraged you to follow not just the money, but to follow, really helping people. And it sounds like you've really succeeded in that. You'll have to come to the Michigan chiropractic conventions. We have a pretty big group of people.
Yeah, I'm coming. I'm actually coming. I'm coming to you live right now from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I live in Florida. This is my satellite studio. Funny story. My youngest daughter, her name is Palmer. We named her after Dee Dee Palmer, the founder of chiropractic.
Kidding.
And I met my significant other in Detroit at the Michigan Chiropractic Association. That's where I found the love of my life.
You did? Oh my gosh! Is she a chiropractor?
No, she's a massage therapist.
My gosh, amazing. I love that. How funny that you're in Kalamazoo right now. Small world. I'm in the UP.
Oh, you're a Youper.
I'm a Youper, yes.
Yeah. I learned this trick. Where do you live?
Yep, exactly. And you have to use You have to use your second hand to show
Because of
where we
Uber,
are.
Yeah, I'm up here.
Yes.
I'm up here.
Well, I'm going to tell my listeners, and I'm going to tell you while we're here. The whole reason that I began this podcast is because I wanted people's voices to be heard, and I wanted the world to be transformed outside of my office. So I'm just so grateful that you took the time to share all of your life's work with us here, giving us some really, really easy things to start with, right? We're going to have all of these in the show notes, but the one thing you could do, my listeners, if you wanted to jump online, is it's www.airwaterhealing.com.
Yeah.
So, Mike, anything else you'd want to share with our listeners today?
Your whole body was designed to heal itself. And I can tell you guys, there is so much power in prayer and fasting. If you guys start to get out of the system that was broken, and what they wanted to do to keep us sick was to really put us into a system where we were convinced, from the mattress company that first came up with the 8-hour sleep schedule, which was our ancestors never did it. We were never meant to sleep for 8 hours. And I think that, we're bogged down with food. Some people are just such overeaters. I've done several extended fasts. I would encourage your listeners, if they could ever do a 24-hour water fast or build their way up to doing a 3-day water fast. It is absolutely incredible. And after you get done doing a water fast, it will literally change the way that you look at food. And it is one of the least expensive things that you can do, is just stop eating. But make sure you talk to your doctor, do your research before you do it. If you have any prior conditions or illnesses, this is not medical advice. So I will always tell your listeners, listen to your body, but definitely you can benefit from intermittent fasting.
That's wonderful, Mike. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. It's been wonderful. And I'm excited to do my own research and checking things out. This is great information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been incredible.
Interested in checking out more products at airwaterhealing.com? Whatever you find to buy, pop it in your cart and then put in code Dr. Stephanie for 10% off.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, like, or subscribe? You can find me on social media at wautierwellness.com, Dr. Stephanie Wautier on Instagram, or Wautier Wellness Chiropractic and Massage on Facebook. And I'm so curious where your next conversation will take you.